Delivery drivers of Reddit, what is the most WTF, not safe for work, or hilariously awkward thing you've walked in on while dropping something off? So, had a large order of pizzas going to a conference room of a hotel. Nothing too out of the ordinary until I opened the door and approximately 500 pugs turned their heads simultaneously at the man who just brought in yummy-smelling food to the pug owners convention. I left and proceeded to have a good laugh. On the other end of the spectrum, there was a guy who ordered and was waiting on his porch steps when I got there. Couldn't help but notice his ball sack hanging out of his shorts. I left and proceeded to bleach my eyeballs. Next story. Used to be a pizza guy in my younger years. Weirdest thing that I ever encountered was delivering some pizzas to an older, larger lady who used a walking stick. She had her grandson over for dinner. She opened up the door. I read out the order. She gave me some winks, paid, then said, "You're getting me as hot as these pizzas. Do you want to come in?" And I stuttered a no, and her grandson, around 12 years old, looked horrified and quietly said, "Holy hell, Grandma." Next story. Back when I was like 23, one time I was delivering alcohol and a lady in a bathrobe opened up the door. An older woman. Very pretty though. She started acting kind of flirty. I smiled and just handed her the bag. Then she asked, "Do you need to see my ID?" And I was like, "Nope, all good." Her smile dropped. I realized then what I had done. I think she needed a win that day. I felt bad enough that I remembered it about 6 years later. Oops. Next story. Back when I was 13, I had a paper route. In the UK, 99.99% of houses have a letter flap on the front door, and we would post the newspapers through the door. One day, I had to cover another kid's route, and when I went to post the paper through one door, it just wouldn't go through. Normally, I'd just leave it hanging out of the door, but it wouldn't even go in enough to stay there, and I thought I would get in trouble if I left it outside. So I opened the flap to see what was blocking it, and it was a wiener. The guy liked to put his privates in the letter flap when he knew the 13-year-old delivery paper boy was coming. I never did that route again, and even quit altogether a few weeks later. I did speak to the kid that usually did that route, and he said that's not normal, but the guy would regularly give him tips, so he was okay with it. I really wish I'd reported it at the time, but I was a kid and was scared I'd lose my job or get in trouble in some other way. Next story. I'm not a delivery driver in any paying capacity, but my neighborhood is really close-knit, so we act as delivery drivers for each other whenever it's needed. One of the guys in my neighborhood who lives a couple of blocks over is an MMA fighter, semi-professional, and all-around nice guy. He has 3 daughters with his ex-wife in a shared custody agreement and loves them to pieces. He asked me to grab the takeout order he'd gotten for the girls and him for dinner on my way home. My practice is literally a block away from the restaurant, so it wasn't a huge deal. I texted him when I got there, and he told me to just come on in. When I walked into the foyer, I beheld one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I should give you a description of him though so you get an idea of what he looks like. He's like 6'3", somewhere around 245 to 250 pounds, muscular jacked guy with a beard. In the living room, he and his daughters are having a tea party after playing dress up. The girls had done his makeup, braided his beard, and he was dressed in a Glinda the Good Witch type dress. Yes, it was pink, and yes, it was in his size. It was so unexpected that it was hilarious to me, and I burst out laughing. He didn't take offense because he realized how funny it looked to walk in on that. It was just so incongruous to what I expected that it bordered on the absurd to me in the moment. And there's a sweet postscript for this moment. We had a neighborhood barbecue the next Thursday night, and over a few beers, we got to talking about it. He offhandedly mentioned that I should see his Ariel from the Little Mermaid costume. It turns out that he owns matching, or as close as possible, dresses/costumes to his daughter's dress-up clothes. I've seen the whole closet that he is dedicated to it, and that's one of the most wholesome things I've ever encountered in hindsight. Next story. I used to deliver propane in northern Michigan. I was doing a delivery to the staff building of a hotel where Jamaican women normally stay during the vacation seasons. I walked into the side door to get a signature for the delivery, and there stood 3 to 4 topless Jamaican women. I blushed, turned my back, and started to quickly apologize. Then I heard an older woman laughing, and she said, "What's the matter, boy? Haven't you ever seen boobies before?" And I told my boss about it when I got back, and he laughed his ass off. Well, everybody, that's the one that broke me. Usually I can at least keep a somewhat straight face, but what's the matter, young boy? Haven't you ever seen boobies before, Nico? Oh, God. Oh, I hope everybody's having a great day so far. Let's continue. Next story. So I delivered pizzas while I was at uni, and on my very first night working the job, I got a delivery to a place pretty close to the pizza shop, walking distance, and was really trying to work out why. I knocked on the door with the pizza, and a completely naked man answered. He couldn't cover himself up fast enough and was extremely embarrassed. Well, turns out the woman I worked alongside with was his wife, and the only delivery driver up until this point. I actually ended up as pretty good friends with both of them, and we still catch up regularly. And now, anytime pizza is planned/mentioned at all, I make the better whip out your wiener joke, and they love it. Next story. Used to work for a small courier service, mostly meds and legal docs. One night, I'm dropping off an employee at this guy's apartment. Doors cracked open, lights are red inside, not dim red, like horror movie red. I knock and I say, "Delivery for James?" Then from inside I hear, "Come in, it's feeding time." Dead serious. And I noped out so hard I nearly left skid marks in the hallway. Called dispatch and made them mark it undeliverable. Next day, the guy calls and goes, "Sorry about the Dracula vibe. I was setting up for my Tarantula's TikTok livestream." I don't even know what part disturbs me more, the fact that he said it so casually, or that the tarantula apparently has fans. Next story. This one is a bit sad, but very surreal. Not a delivery driver, but worked as an EMT. Got called to an apparent heart attack. Really nice apartment building and also a very nice part of town. We go up 2 sets of stairs and there is an open door flanked with 2 naked people that gesture inside. Inside the flat, I would guess about 100 square meters, soft jazz music is playing and the whole flat is full of naked people in an age range from, 20 to 60, all just standing around. I would guess about 50 people at least. In the middle of the living room lies a 60-year-old guy getting CPR from 2 naked dudes. We take over to do our thing. Guy sadly is obviously gone. Machine says no shock. We do CPR anyways and carry him away. All while the music is playing and 50 naked people stare at us not saying a word. That was at about 2 in the afternoon, by the way. No clothes visible in the whole flat, and nobody even tries to cover themselves or even leave. Guess he went the way he lived. Next story. I used to work supermarket home delivery in the UK. I had my regulars who I used to deliver to every weekend on my shifts, including a lovely old man who we can call John. John lived in an upmarket retirement apartment assisted living facility in a small leafy village in the countryside. He was probably in his mid-90s and would always leave a note on the order to knock on his door, then come in to put the shopping in the kitchen for him. When I arrived, he'd just shout, "Come in," and I'd open the front door. Usually he'd be sat upright in his wheelchair in the living room or lying in his bed reading a book. One day, I went along to deliver John's food shop as normal, buzzing myself in on the intercom at the front doors and wheeling my sack barrel with the crates of shopping around the corridors till I got to John's apartment at the end of the corridor on the top of the floor. I noticed when I parked the sack barrel outside the front door that the door wasn't closed like normal. It was ajar. I knocked anyways and heard John say his usual, "Come in," so I proceeded to pick up the first 3 or 4 bags of my shopping and opened the front door. It's important to note here, though, that John's bathroom was immediately on the left side as you came into a small retirement apartment. And as soon as I got through the front door, I saw to the left that the bathroom door was fully open, with John sat in his wheelchair, naked as the day he was born, facing the doorway. His assisted living carer was there to give him his daily shower, I guess, and was midway through scrubbing his balding head as I walked through. Everything was out on show, and I was quite shocked, not expecting to see a fully nude bloke in his 90s at 8 in the morning, but out of British politeness, I just said, "Oh, morning, John. Still wanting the shopping left in the kitchen?" And he said, "Yes, please, mate." So I continue as normal, trying not to look across into the bathroom every time I had to go back to the sack barrel to collect more shopping bags. At the end of the delivery, I asked John if it was all right if I signed for the delivery on his behalf, as I could see he was a bit preoccupied with his shower. It was never mentioned again on the subsequent deliveries that I took to John, till I eventually quit the job a year or so later. Next story. So, not necessarily walked in on, but the most hilarious thing I had laid my eyes on at that job. Knock on this guy's door, he answers, I scanned the parcel, and I hadn't looked at the name on it yet, but when it scanned through, the device said it was addressed to Big Wiener Dave. And I could not hold in my laughter, so I showed the bloke too, and said, "Unique name," and he burst out laughing as well. Went red as a tomato. Explained to me that his mate gets things delivered to his house because he works abroad a lot and puts a new daft name on every single delivery. Next story. Worked as a postal carrier, and back around 2013 to 14-ish, Amazon started their Amazon Sunday delivery service with the USPS. This was a time when Sunday delivery wasn't a thing like it is now. People would do a double take or stop us on Sunday inquiring what the hell we were doing, or straight up call the cops thinking someone stole our signature box truck, LLVs. Anyway, I was walking a package up to the door of a secluded upper-class home, and a woman called out a guy's name from the garage, walked casually out naked, saw me, and screamed. She screamed, I screamed, someone who I assumed was her husband bolted from somewhere and saw me, yelling who the hell I was. While I was yelling, I'm a letter carrier, and I was stuck there for at least 15 minutes trying to show them my credentials. The fact that I'm in a mail truck and had a package addressed to him. To this day, I can't get the image of those boobies out of my head. Next story. I delivered live orchids for a greenhouse as a part-time job. They had to be physically handed to the customers because I was not allowed to leave them outside at all. One place I went to was way out off the main roads, which is saying something because I live in an extremely rural area. My normal grocery trip is half an hour just to get to the closest store. Anyway, I find the address, and the driveway disappears into a forest, and it's a good half a mile of gravel twists before I see the house, and it's dug into the side of a hill looking over a private lake. Like, there's just a dark hallway going back into the dirt, no windows, no doors, no visible structure, just a concrete rectangular tunnel into darkness. I had called the customer beforehand because I learned the hard way that cold delivery means I'm driving back with flowers and wasting time and gas. So I just shouted, "Hello, delivery from greenhouse," and I stood there, kind of taking in the scenery. I then shouted again, and this time I got a response. The guy pokes his head out from a door that I swear was not there when I pulled up, and about halfway down the tunnel, like, he just popped out of the shadows and goes, "Oh, hey there, I didn't hear you pull up." And I hold up the orchid and explain that he has to sign for it, and he's like, sure. And he steps out of the darkness, and it reveals that he is completely naked and covered in mud? Brown paint? I have no idea. But he's just swinging free and dripping gooey brown sludge as he walks into the sunlight to take his delivery. Leaves a huge brown smudge on the invoice and says, "You want to come in for beer?" And even if I didn't have to drive way back out there, no way in hell was I going into the concrete tunnel of darkness with nudie mudman. Nope. Do you guys think that this man's house is the portal to the American version of Spirited Away? Like, his tunnel leads to just redneck, I don't know. They should make Spirited Away in America. More guns, napalm. Oh, I've got an idea. But anyway, next story. So I used to deliver off-site catering for a deli. Mostly chicken parm hot trays and 6 heroes, that kind of thing. Well, it wasn't usual for people to send food to homes after funerals and such. So one day I was sent to a funeral. It was a lot of food for a funeral, like $600 worth of food. So I get to the house and it is absolutely packed with beautiful people, and a good percentage of them are laughing and sunbathing topless by the pool. I should add that this wasn't some huge mansion in the Hamptons. This was a middle-class home in Massapequa, New York. Almost all of the guests at this part were all under 35, and they were all having a blast. And I thought to myself, maybe this isn't a funeral, but there was the memorial picture easel with a "You'll Be Missed" in the living room. Most bizarre funeral I have ever seen. But God, I hope mine is like that. Everyone I know celebrating the life they had with me. Either that or the dude was a total jerk and they were celebrating. Next story. I was a pizza delivery driver for a few months a while back. Had a couple open the door for me, and it was him, just in his boxers, her in just her bra and a bright pink thong, and they were both really sweaty, and it was obvious that I interrupted their fun time. The girl told me I was earlier than expected and smiled. That couple ordered a few more times after that, every time just opening the door in their underwear. Hers getting more revealing every time. After the third time, they asked me if I wanted to join them after I'm done working. I declined because I was in a relationship at the time, but still think about that sometimes. Next story. I once delivered plumbing supplies for a pretty big national company in the UK. I knocked on the door and was greeted by a lady, probably mid-30s, but looked a lot older, rough paper round, I think. But anyway, she answered the door with nothing but a bathrobe on. I passed the parcels to her. She puts them down just inside the door, and every time she bent down, she flashed me her boobs. I tried not to look, but it was kinda hard not to. She then says, "Oh, you like what you see?" with a huge smirk on her face. And then I said, "No thank you, just please sign for your parcels and I'll be on my way." And I got home, and my girlfriend, who is now my wife, said to me, "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." And I still don't think I've recovered 8 years on. Next story. Worked as a courier for roughly 4 years. Have many stories, some shorter, some longer, but I remember rolling up to a small house one time with the second floor windows open. You could hear a couple having a lot of fun up there. Unfortunately, I also had a package to be delivered. So I ring the doorbell, and a minute later, after the sounds quiet down, a shirtless guy pops his head out of the window. I show him the package while he's up there, and he says, "Just a second," runs downstairs, opens the door in nothing but a towel, signs for it, and I get going. I wasn't waiting around to hear if the fun continued, but definitely made me chuckle. Next story. Not a driver anymore, but a supervisor for industrial laundry company. One of my drivers had an early morning delivery to a motel owned by an elderly woman. We owed her some sheets and pillowcases due to a shortage in the previous day's delivery, and early next morning was our only time frame back in the area to make it up. We worked that out with her. Well, she answered the door at 6:30 a.m., butt booty naked and holding a knife. Told our driver that if he ever showed up that early again, she would stab him. Took her delivery, and that was that. Gotta love the rule WV. Next story. I remember one Halloween I was doing deliveries. Nothing was new except it was a night full of candy and odd costumes. I had a pretty large pizza delivery to this apartment complex near a college campus. So, as you do when a delivery boy, I grabbed the drinks and bagged them up and then put the pizzas in the pizza bag. I arrived to the apartment complex and could see the people's decorations on the porch, blah blah blah. I walked up to the door, knocked, and an absolute unit of a darker-skinned guy dressed as Freddy from Scooby-Doo opens the door. Dude had dreads, a little facial hair, had to be at least 6'5", and was built like a pencil. He greets me and then turns around and yells, "Hey yo gang, our pizza's here!" And I cracked up laughing when everyone came running. The dude dressed as Shaggy had to be his twin brother because, once again, an absolute monster tall dark-skinned guy, 6'3" to 6'5", dreads, and built like a pencil. Then a short light-skinned girl came out as Daphne. Her outfits were see-through. A Mexican girl came dressed as Scooby. Her outfit was also see-through. And lastly, a thicker white brunette came dressed as Velma, also see-through, and an extremely short red skirt. She hurried past the crew, turns around in front of the door and said, "Oh no, Mr. Delivery Boy, I dropped my glasses." Yo, she turned around and flipped up her little red skirt, and my goodness, dude, this girl had a very large butt plug-in, and it was like flashing different colors. She also had some other holes filled with things, I'll just say it that way. I heard the girl dressed as Scooby-Doo say, "Ruh-roh." After that, our mystery-solving homie Fred came to her and said, "All right, that's enough with you. I'll deal with your cute ass in the room." Keep in mind, this all happened in about 2 to 3 minutes of me opening the door. He then said to me, "All right, little homie, here's your tip. You have a good rest of your night." And he let out a laugh, handed me $30, a little bag of the greens, smacked Velma on the ass, picked her up, and then everyone rushed to shut the door on me. Excuse the awful typing and spacing on this, but I actually just woke up. I don't have anything to say. It just I have to pause and laugh. The story made me snort. Oh my god, next story. So, appliance installer here. I was delivering a dishwasher and I called the customer before heading over there. The person I called was a man, the husband, and he informed me that he is at work but his wife will be at the house for the install. I arrive at the house, I ring the doorbell, no answer. I ring it a few more times and I start knocking on the door. Eventually, the wife answers the door. Completely messy hair, sweaty, and you can tell she found the nearest dress and slipped it on with nothing underneath. As I am talking to her, another man wearing a tank top and shorts is walking down the stairs, and the first thing he says to her was, "So, how was your trip to Colorado?" And she starts laughing and proceeds to introduce me to her brother. Then he walks out through the garage and disappears. Safe to say, they looked nothing alike. For example, she was a blonde and he had black hair. She was probably having an affair while her husband was at work. Next story. Worked for Domino's for some years. A lot of people tried to tip me with weed. One dude gave me an unopened vibrator, but here's a few stories. I just remembered this one and decided to type it up here up top. I take this dude his food. He calls me by my name. I'm like, craps crazy. He's like, "I can see the name online." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." I in turn call him by his name. Funny for no reason. We talk about nothing, some shows, some games, whatever. Dude seems cool. As I'm leaving, he asks for my last name, and it pops out of my mouth without any thought. The next day, he adds me on Facebook, telling about we should hang out maybe. Same age, same similar interests, it seems. Can never have too many friends, so I'm like, aight. We go to Applebee's. Dude has a 14-year-old daughter and his wife just died. He watched her die, but he's a firefighter/paramedic, so it didn't bother him as much as it would a normal person. Weird. I'm slick thinking that he killed his wife, lol, and we talk about more nothing and then leave. I then tell my girlfriend and she's like, "Oh, he's gay." I don't think so. He has a kid and he was married, but she insists he's gay. Don't hear from him for a while. Eventually he starts messaging me, "Come hang out." Nah, decides he's not worth my time, but every so often I get a "come hang out" text message. After some months it transitions into crap like, "It won't take long." Won't what take long? Nothing. Just come hang out, just trying to talk. I'm like, we're talking right now. And this goes on for months. Then it gets even more weird. "Come hang out, it won't take long." Won't take long for what? You know. I don't know. Until one day, he sends me an emoji of two dudes holding hands, and I'm like, crap, he is gay. I tell him that I'm going to take this as a compliment, but I'm into girls. And he responds with $3 sign emojis, question mark? And I end up blocking him after crap continued to get more weird. But I refused to deliver there for the rest of the time I worked there. He was a lot bigger than me and could have taken my cheeks against my will if he tried to. Then the weirdest one was an order in a shady part of town. Said use the back door. I get there and the front door is inaccessible because of how much stuff is on the porch, so I uneasily go around back. The back door is open, and then 3 of the fattest people I've ever seen and one really skinny dude show up. The most trash I've seen in a house. Something straight out of Hoarders. I can't remember what they were talking about, but I do remember that it was a sexual conversation in nature. This skeeved me out because who I assumed was the daughter was not wearing pants and was sitting right next to the dad. Unpleasant and unnerving all around. Then one girl asked me if I'd be her next baby daddy, and I'm like, nah, I'm good. She doesn't tip. Her mother is there and she says, you aren't going to tip him? Girl responds with, I tried to tip him with this booty, but he didn't take it. Okay. Then one time, a dude answers the door in a towel. I think nothing of it. He begins to close the door, but opens it back up and says something like, not gonna lie, I'm ass naked under this towel. I was beating cheeks before you got here. I got 2 bad girls back there, and it's slick too much for me to handle. You wanna come smash? You can pick which one you want, but I politely declined. Then I go into a hotel room one time of middle-aged men drinking and smoking weed. Like 6 dudes in a room. They're watching tennis and getting hyped, and one of them asks me if I like Venus or Serena more, and I say, I don't know, I don't follow tennis like that. And then he asks, you a boob or an ass guy? And I'm like, ass, I guess? Yeah, you like Serena then. And then the whole room was super hype after that. It was a positive experience. Continuing, this one's not weird, but really was neat. Ticket says I need to yell, this is Sparta, if I want to tip. Dude answers, and I'm like, you want me to scream it? And he's like, hell yeah, all you've got. And we're in an apartment building. So I ask if we can go outside. We do. I put my back and my balls into it, and I yell, this is Sparta, as loud as I can. Dude tells me that was awesome, and then hands me $20. And last one, delivering a pizza to one of the more shady apartment complexes. I go to walk up the stairs, and there's a dude at the bottom who's giving me sword vibes. We didn't really interact, but something seemed off. I ascend to the stairs and knock on the door, and a woman answers and tells me she didn't order anything. I confirm her address. I'm at the right spot, but she hasn't ordered. Okay, guess it's time to go. I then descend the stairs, and Weirdo is still there, and I get a bad feeling, so I start walking quickly. I can hear him walking behind me, and he's getting faster as I get faster. I end up running the last couple of paces, get in my car, and lock the door. Then the dude is banging on my window with one hand and aiming at me with the other, but his hand was in the hoodie, so I'd wager he was bluffing. But crap was still crazy. Next story. I've been doing DoorDash on the side for about 4 years now. Fortunately, I live in a decent enough area that I don't have too many WTF or not safe for work moments. I've had a few times where I've handed orders through half-underground basement windows to someone who didn't want me going to the front door, usually kids who aren't supposed to be ordering. One time was a girl who looked around 14 to 16 years old, 10:30 p.m., who asked me not to ring the doorbell or knock. Pretty common request. I pull up and it's a nice big place, and as I'm walking up to the main door, which is just some kind of decorative glass that you can kind of see through, I see the girl kneeling on the floor just inside with each arm wrapping around a different dog and holding their snouts shut to keep them from barking. I then set the food down, and just as I'm getting back into my car, I hear a commotion. The dogs are both running outside in the yard and barking up a storm, and she's running after them, quietly yelling, trying to get them back inside. Me, I just started backing out of the driveway, having to stop whenever one of the dogs ran around my car, but made it out. As I drive off down the street, she was still chasing them around outside. Always wondered if she got into trouble with her parents or if they slept through that whole thing. Then, another time, a little more unnerving, I delivered to 2 girls who looked like high schoolers. I'm not huge on eye contact, but usually just try to be polite while handing food over. One of the girls, though, asks if I liked the other girl's shirt. I thought she was asking about some design or graphic, but when I actually gave a glance, I saw that it was just a thin, sheer black top that I could see through, as she did a little pose for me. I just muttered something about it being nice and averted my gaze and noped out of there. But one of my favorite amusing times was when I delivered to a nursing home. It was around 7:30 p.m. and I had to get let in. There were 2 ladies in electric scooters scooters/wheelchairs hanging out in the lobby, and one of them let me in, but she didn't want to let me wander the halls alone, and she knew the lady I was delivering to. So she said she'd lead me up to the room, and she caught me off guard with how fast she drove her scooter around the building. I was practically having to jog to keep up with her as she's cutting corners and zipping around like she was driving for NASCAR. On the way up, she commented that she was grateful for the distraction because it was so quiet. I then asked, being a Friday evening, "Oh, people go out for dinner a lot at this time with family and such?" And then she gave such a huge laugh and said, "Dinner? It's after 7. Half the building is asleep already." Then there was a time I had to deliver to these really shady apartments. The main door to the building had no lock to get in. It had a place where a lock was supposed to be put in, but it was just an open hole. So I let myself in and knocked on the unit's door because it was a hand-it-to-me order. I had to knock a couple of times because the TV inside was so loud that I could clearly hear cartoon sounds from whatever was being watched. Then, when someone finally answered, they aggressively yanked the door open just enough to stick their head out, and the guy angrily asked, "What do you want?" And I just held up the food and said, "Delivery for guy," and the guy snatched it out of my hand and slammed the door. And I heard him yell over the loud TV, "Who effing ordered DoorDash?" I figured a kid got a hold of a phone or something. On a positive note though, one time I delivered a single Firehouse sub to a guy that was only like a 3-mile drive, already nice and short with a decent tip on it. But after I dropped it off, they added another $20 to the tip. I was grateful, but also very confused. Next story. Not a delivery driver. However, in my teens for a summer, I was driving one of those ice cream bicycles. Driving around on it, customers would come out and purchase. I was in some urban neighborhood not too far from where I lived. I was on the job for a few hours and just heard what I thought was a loud glass banging noise. So I started looking around and saw 2 gals with their shirts over their heads and both pairs of breasts pressed up against the picture window that they had been banging on. Very, very healthily sized pairs. I then shouted thank you, smiled, and offered them as much ice cream as they could carry. And they did not take me up on it and instead retreated. I just smiled, appreciated the random favor, and went on my way. Next story. I got a few. Mostly involve nudity. Most of that not good, and 2 always come to mind though. Delivering pizzas in college, got an order for 20 pizzas delivered in 2 batches of 10. The house was rocking 50s and 60s music and could be heard clearly down the block. I dropped off the first 10 and went back for the second 10. When I got back with the second order, the house was quiet. No music, most of the lights were off. I knock and a man opens the door to get them, and everyone is in various stages of nudity. Just talking, nothing sexual, just talking. They tipped me like 200% and asked for discretion. Then, fast forward a few years and I'm working in IT sales and service. This was back in the early aughts when custom desktops and 17-inch CRT monitors were the rage. Had a walk-in customer, big burly biker type, ordered 5 PCs, a bunch of peripherals, but only 1 monitor. He also wanted delivery and setup, but requested that it was me because I seemed cool. He then gave me a gram of weed. Then, a week later, I make the appointment for the setup, and he lives in basically a biker clubhouse. Think Sons of Anarchy. Main floor stinks like stale beer and cigars, and there are a few passed out people, 9 a.m. on a Wednesday, most in various stages of undress. He tells me they had a party last night, and then he leads me upstairs to what I can only describe as a film studio. I set up the machines, attach them to a video switcher, and show him how to import the video from his cameras and set up the various webcams. While we're finishing up, 2 women in silk robes walk in, and he introduces me to his wife and girlfriend. It's clear they do not want me around. He ushers me out and gives me an ounce of weed and some hash. He ended up being a repeat customer for years. Next story. I carried a 300-pound rug through a too small elevator shaft and then up and down some stairs to have the recipient refuse the delivery because there was a hole in the rug. It was invisible and I never saw it. As we were flipping the rug out, she noticed and told me to throw it away. I told her it was not something I was willing to do, and she called down to the front office and told them the rug was mine now. She then got on the line and had a new rug sent free of charge. I still didn't see the hole. I dragged the rug back to the basement and told my boss she told me to throw it away, and he asked if I wanted it, and I said okay. And then we went out and looked at the crate it came in. There was an almost imperceptible slit at the top of the crate just under where the cross member went. I checked it to the rug and it matched. Whoever transferred the rug between trucks punctured the crate and rug and maybe didn't realize. I still have and use this rug though. We looked it up and it is between $3,000 and $5,000 way back in 2000. 2009. Now, it just keeps my garage nice in the winter. The hole got bigger too, but the cost stayed the same. Next story. I was a delivery food guy back in college in the early 2000s, and I saw an order for 5 baskets of jalapeno poppers and 1 iced tea, and immediately thought, these guys are going to be drunk. I roll up on my bike to an apartment, and I see the living room lights seem to be shut off. I knock anyways, and the door flies open. A guy is there with his head totally wrapped up in a big towel, with CDs where his eyes are, and he's looking through the holes in the center of the CDs. Then he just says, "Did you bring the jalapeno poppers?" And then a voice from inside pipes up, "And the iced tea?" And I look inside, and there's a small couch with 3 other guys crammed onto it, all with the same towel/CD headdresses on, with a black light as the only illumination. I assure them that I do have their order, and the guy gives me a big paper sack full of change. "We only have nickels and dimes to pay you, but I assure you there is a generous gratuity included." I go back to the restaurant then, and at the end of my shift, I count up all of their effing change, and there was indeed a 30% tip that my boss made me take home and change. But whatever. Next story. I checked the minibar in a resort room once that a now fairly famous celebrity was holed up in for a few weeks. He gave 0 Fs. His partner was spread eagle naked on the bed without a care in the world. He was butt naked sitting at the table when he invited me in to restock the fridge. He politely put a shirt over his privates when I came in, but he didn't give a crap. He'd only made a few movies at the time, but I was still a massive fan of his. Still am. Was a cool guy. Had a few good chats over his stay. Clearly some hard drugs were involved at the time, but he's had a great career, so he obviously had it under check. Next story. I used to do grocery deliveries for a few years, and the 2 incidents that still stand out to me to this day are, first, delivered to an elderly couple on my first shift. Was instructed to knock on the door and wait for the wife to answer the door. A few minutes go by and I hear nothing, so I knock again. I hear some mumbling, shuffling of feet, and the front door swings open, revealing an elderly man, trousers and underwear by his ankles. Then his wife comes bustling in, flustered, and says, "Oh, for F's sake, you know you're not meant to be answering the door in the middle of a piss," and then turns to me and explains, he's blind, as if that was the reason for him answering the door with his trouser down. And then the second one, delivered to a woman who opened the door, panicked, slammed the door shut, and then asked me to wait for a few minutes. She then opened the door a few minutes later in a dressing gown, asked me to take her shopping through to her kitchen, but avoid looking around when heading down the corridor. And okay, weird, but that's fine. Anyway, I was curious, snuck a look walking past the living room and caught a glimpse of some very professional-looking camera equipment, soft box lighting, etc., and several naked people stood around. Safe to say, I was ushered out of there ASAP. Next story. Wasn't a delivery driver, but I was going door to door taking orders for GS cookies. I think I was 12 or so and very innocent. At one house, a rather sweaty girl in her teens wearing only a t-shirt that came down to her knees opened up the door. I saw a shirtless teenage boy behind her. I asked her if her parents were home, and she said no. We weren't really supposed to try and sell cookies to anyone but adults, so I said I'd come back when her parents were home. Then she freaked out and said no, and then grabbed the form, ordered a bunch of boxes, barely looking at the form, then closed the door. When it was time for her delivery, I went back. Her mom said, "I didn't order cookies." And when I said no, there was a girl here who ordered, called her daughter, who started to say she didn't order anything, saw me, and then she looked absolutely horrified. She nervously told her mom something like, "Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you I did that a while ago. I was going to pay for it myself." Rummaged in her purse, shoved some bills at me, took the boxes, whispered softly, "Thank you," and shut the door. It was a couple of years later when it hit me I'd interrupted 2 horny teens who bought cookies to buy my silence. Next story. I was a delivery driver for Best Buy and was delivering a fridge to a very nice house. The owner said she wouldn't be there, but her daughter would be. Her daughter was 19. So we get to the house for the delivery, and 2 girls answer the door in bikinis. The community has a private lake. They are giggling and dancing around. It didn't take long to realize they were both drunk. They also stated that they had been day drinking. Well, we got the old fridge out and had the new one almost in place when I turned around to talk to the girl. I let her know the work was done and warranty stuff and blah blah blah. She said, "Okay," and then her friend pulled up her bikini top. Mind you, the friend pulled up the other girl's bikini top. I looked, respectfully, and then I turned away. I grabbed the paperwork, turned around to have her sign it, and her top was still up and they were both giggling again. She had some very nice boobs. She signed the paperwork and then we left. Next story. I was once delivering to a keg bar in New York City, popped down the basement chute, and saw 2 guys sitting at tables with mirrors in front of them. Naturally, I just say, "Hey guys," to be pleasant and acknowledge them. Took me a few minutes to move stuff around and get the keg in the cooler, looking for empties, etc. The penny dropped and it was a couple of drag performers getting ready. When I passed them on the way out, the wigs were on. "Have a great show, ladies," and gave me a chortle. Next story. Probably gonna get buried, but I delivered pizzas in college. One Halloween, I took an order to this guy's house. He opened the door and handed me a phone and said, just go with it. His girlfriend was gonna call, and he was gonna prank her by pretending to be dead or something. It all happened really fast. I didn't know what to think, so my brain went, she's probably used to it. So I took the phone and spoke to her, and I said something like, hi, is this someone who knows this guy? I'm a delivery guy. I just got here, and the guy's on the floor. And have you ever read anything about the sounds parents make when they find out that their kids have died? She made a noise like that. Instant regret. She freaked out, started telling me to do CPR, check his pulse, keep him alive until I get there, that kind of stuff. She said she was calling 911. The dude was making hand gestures at me, so I said, you might want to wait on that until you get here. So she gets home, and the dude's like, gotcha! And the woman is standing there with puffy eyes and a wet face. And I'm finally able to speak and say something like, I am so sorry. I thought it was a thing you guys did. She said it was fine. She knew it was all him. The dude then eventually let me out, insisted on putting a tall boy Bud Light in my hand for my troubles. I'm a delivery driver, and I never ended up drinking it, once because Bud Light is ew, and two because I didn't deserve a reward for that. Even thinking of the sound she made then, like over 10 years ago now, still makes my breath catch. I still can't believe I did that. On a more positive note, I am way less likely to do anything described as just go with it because of this. I have other stories, but they're pretty much just X happened, nothing fun or sexual. Trust me, very disappointing for college me. Next story. Not a delivery driver, but my husband works with a company that utilizes fleets of drivers. My favorite story, a woman who had clearly been on substances jumped in the passenger side of a delivery guy's van and immediately pooped into her hands and then dropped the nuclear bomb on the floorboards of his van. But it got everywhere. That poor guy had to drive the van back to the warehouse after ditching the lady, and then some people helped to get it cleaned up. But the smell, oh my God. Next story. This was during a pickup. When I was delivering for Uber, I got an order to pick up from CVS. I get in the building and look at the list, and it's mostly like Gatorade, candy, and a frozen pizza or two. But the last item on the list was a vibrating fleshlight. Needless to say, it was awkward to have to ask the young girl at the register to get keys to unlock the case for me so she could bring it up to the front and ring me out. Had to take it to a barracks on an army base. The dude seemed pretty happy when I showed up with his order. Next story. Worked pizza delivery back in 2004. I have a few memorable stories. Funniest was delivering to some guys that were clearly high out of their minds, had scrounged up a bunch of coins to pay, and to be nice to me, and probably easier for them to make sure they had enough, they had grouped the coins together in $1 groups and then taped all of the groups to a big piece of cardboard. They handed me this 1-foot square sheet of cardboard and I just shrug and say, it works for me. Then there was a regular customer that was an older lady. I was 19, she was probably late 30s, early 40s, and she'd hit on every male driver. She was reasonably attractive, I guess, but I never took her up on it. And then there was this house situated off of a long dirt road. 2-story garage was in the back of the house. There was a note on the front door that said to go around back and knock on the garage door. I do. The door opens about 3 inches. Someone slides some money out. I slide the pizza under the door closes, and I go on my way. Next story. Knocked on the door. She tells me to come in, go in, and she calls me into her bedroom. It smells. Bedroom is trashed, garbage clothes. She's probably 40-something-ish, a little rough looking. Tells me she's bedridden despite moving every limb. Sounds crazy. Asked me to get her a soda from her closet like 4 feet away from her. Dim lights. I'm wearing prescription glasses. Can barely see. It smells worse. Closet filled with brand new sealed iPads. Headphones, junk food, more electronics, about 6 cases of soda, and about 20 cases of adult diapers, packed to the brim with all that and more. Tells me she is bedridden. Then tells me her boyfriend left on Monday. Doesn't know where he went or if he's coming back. It's Friday. She's friendly, but I can tell she's got a screw loose just like from 20 seconds of conversation. Asks me to hand her a pack of diapers along with her soda. Whatever. Asks me, pleads with me to take out her garbage because it's been weeks, and I can tell it smells, but whatever. I'm just thinking at this point, maybe good tip money. Plus, this lady isn't all there, and if she's telling the truth, at least I could help her out a little bit, right? She then directs me to her side of the bed opposite the door and closet where I've been until now, and it effing smells. Just gather this little bit here and take it all out. Thank you so much. You're so sweet. Thank you, thank you. And I move the top layer, and the smell hits hard. A mountain of dirty adult diapers, crap-covered papers, crap-covered clothes, crap-covered carpet, Bob Saget Dumb and Dumber. There is crap everywhere. I worked a kennel for years. I've cleaned up the most nasty-smelling, rank-ass crap you can imagine. Dogs have no shame, so I decide to go for it. Got a big tip. I power through about 2 or 3 before one splits and spills even more crap everywhere. Now, I just want to get the F out of there. I'm starting to feel sick. My heart is racing. I'm dizzy. The smell. OMG, the smell. The crap is getting to me, no pun, and I look down, 2 or 3 down, like 45 to go. Holy Christ, I'm not gonna make it. I'm gonna puke. What the hell is that? Not a diaper? She's not too old to menstruate. I'm done. I drop everything and literally jump back and asked to use her restroom to wash up. I run to it, not waiting for an answer, and it looks abandoned. Rusty toilet, covered in old garbage and magazines, more dirty diapers, and I nope out of it altogether and run to my car. I bathe in hand sanitizer and peel out like I'm being chased by a horror movie killer. Find out later, she tipped on credit card. $2. Well, everybody, if you ever wanted to know what a story sounds like when every sentence is 3 to 5 words long, period, 3 to 5 words long, period, that is what it sounds like. Did it flow well? You tell me. But anyway, next story. So, delivering pizza, and we get a call to deliver to a fairly rough part of town. I, female, was the only driver available, so the boss gave me his pistol to carry and told me to radio in when I got to the house and then when I got back to the car. When the guy who ordered the pizza answered the door, his pants were undone, and he invited me inside. I declined very politely, handed him his pizza, and got the hell out of there as quickly as I could. Most, if not all, local pizza joints won't even deliver to that side of town anymore. Even the college on that side of town is excluded from pizza delivery because of how often drivers were threatened. If you live east of a certain street, you have to order pickup or you don't get pizza. Next story. Back in my late teens, I worked as a pizza delivery driver for Papa John's. One afternoon, I had a delivery to one of the local adult shops in town. I walked in, went up to the front counter, and told the woman working that I had a pizza for someone named John. She glanced up and said, "Oh, he's in the theater." I paused, confused, and told her I didn't know where that was, and she smiled knowingly and said, "It's in the back behind the blue door. Go ahead, don't worry, there's only a few people back there, you'll be fine." Her reassurance didn't help me much, but I made my way to the door and stepped inside. The room was dark, lit only by a projector playing an adult content movie on the wall. Scattered around were mismatched pieces of furniture, couches, folding chairs, and a table. Right in the middle of the room, a woman was bent over a chair, getting vigorously railed by a man, while another guy, presumably her husband, sat nearby watching quietly. He noticed me come in, held a finger to his lips to shush me, and motioned for me to come over. I awkwardly tiptoed through the scene, placed the pizza on the table as instructed, and saw a $20 bill waiting for me. Just as I turned to leave, the guy doing the plowing casually reached over, flipped open the pizza box, grabbed a slice, and took a bite, never missing a beat. Hands down, the weirdest delivery I ever made. Next story. Not really a WTF or NSFW, but I delivered some pizzas to a house, and the mom answered, took the food, and told me to come in because it was raining. She goes to the kitchen to get some money, and her daughter is having a piano lesson. They stop, and the teacher gives me this snooty less than look, so I say, "Sorry to interrupt, don't mind me. I play piano too, so I've been there." And the guy looks at me and scoffs and says, "Oh, really?" So I proceed to say, "Yeah, I know that song. It's GF Handel Saraband from Suite Number 11, right?" And the dude does the blinking guy meme and goes, yeah, that's right. Like, how does this loser pizza guy know that?" So I said, "Yeah, it's a good one," and started whistling the melody while the mom walked back giggling to herself and gave me a pretty nice tip. Next story. I worked for a very small delivery service years ago in my early 20s. It was mostly legal documents between firms, but we had some bigger clients too, namely big clothing retailers. This is important for later. So, late one afternoon, I was asked to drop off a random box on my way home. I was in a rougher part of town, warehouse district. Sun was going to set soon, and it wasn't my usual area. I first pushed back a bit, hesitant to deliver because of the circumstances, but eventually gave in and I did it. Made it to the drop-off just before the sun set in a dark warehouse lot. The only lights in this parking area were some dim lights over most of the doors. Some lights were out, barely a lighting for the numbers on the doors that actually had numbers. Then, one random door had a bouncer wearing all black and a wire in his ear. Based on the package address, I deduced that this was the drop-off location. I parked a good distance away just in case, and I shout at the guy from afar, I think I have a package for you." And he responded, "Who do you work for?" So I tell him. He goes, "1 minute, I'll be right back." Well, by the time he got back, the sun was actually set. And at this point, I'm sweating bullets. He comes back out with another bouncer, and he says, "Grab your package and come in, the boss is waiting for you." It's worth noting at this point that the service I work for requires a signature from the customer that placed the order due to legal reasons. So I actually need the boss's signature for protocol reasons. The compliance part of my brain at this point is like, okay, get in, get the signature, and get the hell out. And just in case, pretend you didn't see anything. So I carefully get the package, walk up to the door, and get ready to go in. The main bouncer says, "We will need to escort you for safety reasons." And I'm practically shaking at this point with fear, but I'm already committed. The first step I take in is into this long, dark hallway, and I hear very loud music in the back area. Finally, we go inside under this thick black curtain to the brightest lit warehouse I've ever witnessed, with Right Side Fred's "I'm Too Sexy" playing over some loudspeakers. Inside, I see the most gorgeous women I've ever seen in my life walking around in lingerie, getting their picture taken. I stop for a moment to take it all in, all while the bouncer's laughing at me at how dumbfounded I probably look. I do eventually make it to the boss after multiple posing sets, drop the package off, and get the signature. I had the widest grin on my face the whole time that I couldn't hide. That part of my brain saying, "You didn't see anything," took a back seat as I took it all in. The boss's assistant opens the package to check the inventory, and turns out it was more lingerie-looking clothes. The assistant just waves her hands at me to shoo, and I casually walk back out with the bouncers. The head guy on the way out was like, "It's quite the sight to see, huh? No one will ever believe you if you tell him." I was so dumbfounded when I got back to the car, confirmed the package was dropped off, and told dispatch, "If you ever need anything dropped off here, guys, again, I want to be the first to know." And I never got to go back there after that, but I'll never forget that magical moment. Next story. About 10 years ago, I was delivering a bunch of pizzas to presumably an office pizza party. It was in an old but very fancy-looking building. The elevator opened into a beautiful front office. The walls and furniture were a dark mahogany. The ceilings were covered in decorative ceiling tiles. A huge oriental rug was on the floor, 2 big leather seats in front of a massive desk. It looked like a very expensive lawyer's office. Then the guy there told me that they were going to the conference room and that he'd show me the way. We went through a door into a brightly lit white hallway, and the first thing I see is a big glass case display of dildos. The walls had big framed pictures of what looked like gay adult content video covers. The contrast was startling and unexpected. Turns out they were a startup making an app like Grindr. Next story. Not a delivery driver, but I worked multi-family pest control, was in training, signed in at the office as usual, got the list of apartments to stop at, business as usual, pull up to the back end of the property, and get told by my trainer to grab lots of sticky traps and extra spray, thinking nothing of it at the time. We then eventually knock a few times announcing pest control. No answer. We proceed to use the keys provided by the office to open up and walk inside. My trainer is cautious and moving inside slowly. I assume due to making sure we're not startling or walking in on someone unprepared. Nope. As I walk into the entry, I notice the apartment is dark and the light from the door casts a shadow across the wall. But the movement of the shadow is delayed. Like I open the door wider, but the shadow takes a moment to move and settle. Roaches. Hundreds of small German roaches. Walking through the apartment, every nook and cranny, corner, and gap is filled with dead and living small little roaches. Takes us nearly 45 minutes to sweep the place and pick up all of the sticky traps left before and replace them. So many dead roaches, they were falling out of the traps. My trainer mentions to me that these type of roaches will eat each other, and that's why they were all stacked up on top of each other. The worst part was absolutely walking into what seemed like to be a kid's room, mattress on the floor with an open laptop just covered in dead roaches. I then asked my trainer in the most serious tone I could, "We can call CPS, right?" And he said, "No, we work for the office. It is their property. They have been notified many times." Later, I was called out to the same place a few times, but for the neighbor's apartment. Completely clean and well taken care of, other than the few stray roaches on the wall or in a corner. They tell me they don't understand why they have bugs, that they clean constantly, and I just mentioned that it wasn't their fault and might want to talk to the office about moving places. Next story. Delivered for Jimmy John's during undergrad many years ago. Took a delivery to a La Quinta, and the room ended up being in an isolated back corner of the hotel. Went in to knock and noticed that they had flipped the locking bar in front of the doors, so I had to sort of hold the door handle and knock at the same time. I heard 2 voices say, "Come in," and could tell they were at the far end of the room. I cracked the door open and announced that their sandwiches were here, and they noticed and were in bed with the covers pulled up to their chins. They told me to come in, and I immediately felt like something was off. I kinda hesitated, and they told me that I better come in if I wanted to get paid, so I reluctantly went in. They proceeded to get out of bed, ass naked, and searched for their money in what I'll call a flirty, teasing way. Took a solid few minutes of that before they actually paid me and let me go. Later, when I was bored, at work, I found a Craigslist ad for their services. Also, I delivered to a stripper before before, which wasn't totally uncommon on its own, but once I delivered to her mid-performance and was incorporated into the routine. Next story. I'm on the wrong side of this, but the question did provoke a memory. A friend of the family had something to drop off, and she did not want to just leave it on the porch, which sits right next to my window. I was doing the nasty and the pasty with my girlfriend at my parents' place while they were out. Seems that the car that pulled up at the bottom of the driveway was to our house and not our neighbors. The transition from effing for the first time since we had the house to ourselves that week to, oh crap, they're on our stairs, was abysmal. Failing to quietly pretend we aren't there without giggling too much may have been my mistake, but I persisted with the plan of remaining in situ. She may have gotten an eyefall when looking between the Venetian blinds thinking that I was just being rude and not coming to the door, but I was otherwise occupied. I did the right thing. I blocked the view of my wife with my pale ass, and I think it worked. She left after that. Thanks for the reminder. Next story. Delivery driver here. Sometime last year, I was delivering pizza to a Halloween party. I was expecting a party in the beginning of the afternoon, but whatever. The guy opening the door was like 6'5", 350 pounds, hairy as F, and in a sexy maid outfit. Of course, all of his friends, and himself though he tried not to, were laughing their asses off. I was somehow also able to keep it professional, and when he closed the door, I started laughing too. Then another time I had a delivery to an apartment with an intercom at the entrance. So I use it to call to the client, get no answer, try again just in case, get an answer, and the guy opens the door. All right, he was slow, but whatever. I take the elevator, get to his door, and hear a girl moaning obnoxiously. I think maybe it's from another room, so I knock on the door, no answer. Knock again, still no answer. So I call him up on his phone, and the moaning stops. He answers the phone, then the door. The guy shows up with only sweatpants and hard as a rock. Delivery goes fine afterwards, but why would you get back to it if you knew the delivery guy is coming? Anyway, reading the other comments, I guess I was lucky. Next story. Was delivering pizza in college, and this super drunk girl answers in a revealing t-shirt and panties. Her dog runs out and she runs to catch him. She apologizes. I just say, oh, don't worry, you're fine. Well, she looks at me, and she winks, saying, that's exactly what I'd say in your situation too, and starts turning up the drunken flirting. Then I hear a very quiet, hi, Mega, from the house. One of the drivers I worked with was there. They were partying, and it was her drunk friend. It's a fond memory of mine. Next story. Little late to the party here, but I'll rattle off what I can remember. One night, I get a delivery to an upstairs apartment. Very generous tip on the order, and the business I worked at was known for being speedy. I get there in about 4 to 5 minutes. Shirtless gentleman answers the door. He's looking exactly like the Adderall, glass of wine, diesel jeans guy. Hand him his order with a big smile, and he hits me with, have you ever been naked on camera? First words out of his mouth. I was 19 at the time and told him not yet, but if the money was better than what I was making, I'd consider it, and then I left as fast as I could. Another time, I got a delivery to a clinic of some sort. I talk with the front desk lady, tell her who the order is for, etc. I realize I had forgotten the drink for the order, and told the secretary I would be back right with it. She had told me that she'd absolutely love me if I could bring back a pickle for her. The owner of my shop was strict, and I told her I'd try my best. I arrived with the drink, no pickle unfortunately, and the one secretary said, oh, did you bring my pickle for me? Or is it in your pocket? Once again, I was 19 and there were people in the waiting room, so I just turned red and left. Then one time took a shift at a location in the city. Got shot at. Maybe not aimed at me, but heard the bullets whiz, so definitely too close for comfort. Ducked between some cars, finally dropped off the order, no tip, and another drunk dude tipped 40 later that night, so it was worth it. And finally, had one family that would always order and never tip. Always pay in cash to really rub it in. Would pay the next dollar up / send their kids out to pay, anything to just really shaft our drivers. And we never retaliated, like no napkins or straws or extra ice, etc. One night, their total came out to like $13 to $14, and they messed up. They only had a 20 and sent out the adult. We make them swap and I tell them to have a nice night, and I walk back to my car while he's standing there trying to call out to me. That was a few days before my last day there, and it just felt so damn good. Oh no, babe, I tipped by accident. I was a good person by accident. Oh no. You know that they get off to the idea of not tipping delivery drivers. They watch them go back to their car and then rub one out and moan through the window and steam up the glass. And they're just like, you know, let me stop. Anyway, next story. So, I was a driver for Domino's for a couple of years. Some other drivers may be able to confirm this, but you have a lot of regulars, and it's pretty rare to get someone you've never delivered to before. Well, I'm working one day, and one of those new deliveries comes up. We've never delivered to this house before. I get there, walk up to the door with her pizza, and as I'm going up the steps to her porch, she opens the door and stands there, leaning against the door jamb. And she is stunning. Like, she could have been a model pretty. She's acting flirtatious and I'm just being polite and professional back. I give her the pizza, she gives me the money, and I get in my car and I go about my business. Then I'm about 2 blocks down the road when it hits me that she was wearing a baby doll tee and nothing else. Yeah, chances are I would have been kidnapped and had my organs harvested, but still. Next story. When I was 19, I was a pizza delivery driver. I had a couple of weird deliveries, but this one really freaked me out. At the time, I'm one of the only girl delivery drivers at this place, and I was working the closing shift. We get a last-minute delivery and was not looking forward to it. When I get there, it was in the middle of nowhere, and the last part of the driveway is extremely loose sand. My little Honda Accord did not like it, so I immediately backed up to where the gravel was and walked the rest of the way. The guy was waiting on the porch, and when we were exchanging the money, I heard something rustling behind me, but I didn't see anything when I looked. When I turned back around, the guy was looking past me while shaking his head and making a kind of no/don't signal with his hands. I got out of there as quick as I could, but always wondered if it was nothing or if I escaped being murdered or something. Well, everybody, the moral of the story here is that delivery drivers see some weird stuff, and the old school adult video content line of like the pizza guy coming in, you know what? Maybe it's not as far-fetched as we originally thought. Maybe the plumber really is laying pipe, who knows? I've also learned while doing this video that I've never had these unwanted, random spontaneous advances or random flashing of boobies come my way. I've been flirted with twice in my lifetime. The first time, I wasn't feeling it. The second time, I didn't realize until 2 to 3 years later, I was like, oh, she's flirting with me. I'm 27. It doesn't happen often, okay? I got a haircut today, so I'm looking pretty good. But anyway, guys, feel free to comment if you've had any relevant experiences. Thank you all so much for watching, listening to me ramble at times. Have a good day, and bye-bye.